Okay, take two. Welcome to Critical Weight Theory. And this is sort of a new show within a show that I'm calling What a Riff-Off, where I look at some classic rock guitar riffs and I decide which one belongs at the top of the heap. Now, this is basically my own opinion. There's not any claim to being totally objective or something like that. So don't get your panties in a bunch or whatever, like expecting that you're going to agree with all of my rankings of these songs or whatever. So, yes, today I am diving into one of the greatest pleasures in rock music, the guitar riff. Not the flashy solo, not the emotional ballad, just that unforgettable sequence of notes that grabs you by the ears and refuses to let go. Sort of like a fishhook that just gets caught in your ear. And I'm going to decide which riff has the most power, which riff is the catchiest, and all that sort of thing. So, we're going to look at different types of rock riffs here. And, we're going to try to be objective about it, but at the end of the day, it is going to be about opinion. So, you know the type of issue you get when it comes to music. You're at work, grabbing a coffee mug from the highest cupboard or whatever, and suddenly your brain starts going, and you get a rock riff in your head. The problem is sometimes you don't even know the riff necessarily, right? Sometimes you get a riff or maybe a lyric or something like that in your head, and if you're a rock fan or maybe just a music fan, it seems you'll inevitably come across a question that somebody else puts out there too. Someone's trying to identify a rock song, and their description will be like da 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 with a guitar. And unfortunately, in some cases like that, that's not nearly enough information for you to uh, operate on, and you're not going to know how to help them out necessarily. And that's because there are literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of rock songs that will fit such a description. A lot of rock riffs, they do kind of sound a little bit alike. So if someone asks me to identify a song based only on like da 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 da, I'm sometimes going to need a little bit more to work with. Can you remember any lyrics? Was it a 1970s classic rock song or a 90s rock song? And keep in mind, 90s rock is increasingly considered classic rock now in its own right. And, was the singer male or female? Was it an electric or an acoustic guitar? Was the opening an actual guitar riff, or was it some twiddly, twiddly, twiddly guitar solo? Those types of guitar solos, like that are almost interchangeable. You can kind of put them in any rock song just about. Um, and that's kind of the difference between the sort of riffs I'm talking about and just any old rock riff. These are riffs that stand out. There's not as much of a mystery. It's something that everyone instantly recognizes, even if they're not rock fans. They've heard some of these riffs somewhere, maybe at least in the supermarket or something. So today I'm ranking six of. Did I say raking or ranking? I meant to say ranking, but I'm ranking six of the greatest guitar riffs ever written, and my criteria that I'm trying to apply, they're simple. How catchy is it? How influential has it been? And perhaps most importantly, does it absolutely kick ass? That's an important thing. Like you got to have a riff with a little bit of drive in order for it to be at the top. So let's count them down. So number 6 on my list for today's little session, it is Jessica by the Allman Brothers Band. Now, I had a girlfriend named Jessica, but I'm going to try not to factor that in here either positively or negatively. So, this is considered an instrumental masterpiece, but it's not at the top of my list. It's in the number 6 spot. So, that doesn't mean it's not a good riff. It's like a bit of a winding road of a song, and instrumental, but it's still somehow catchy. So that's respectable in its own right. To have kind of a riff that's a little bit tricky to hum and all that, but it's still somehow catchy. So I give it some respect points just for that. Jessica doesn't need lyrics because that guitar melody, it really does all the talking. And guitarist Dickie Betts and the Allman Brothers crafted one of the happiest, most uplifting melodies in classic rock. So it's not every day that I like a song that has an uplifting, feel good kind of vibe. I'm kind of a mopey, aggressive kind of rock fan for the most part. But this riff, it does kind of kick ass. This is kind of a kick ass instrumental, especially for one that's uplifting sounding. It's also proof that a riff doesn't even have to be aggressive to become unforgettable. Sometimes just pure melody is enough to do the trick. And that's why this is a respectful nod in the direction of Jessica. Even though this kind of it didn't make it first place, it still has a pretty solid standing in my heart and in my ears. Even though I don't listen to that instrumental as often as I should. You know, it's one of those things you can't listen to everything equally as often. But maybe I owe it to myself to listen to Jessica in the near future. All right, let's look at the number 5 spot. Well, this is a song that the vast majority of people who listen to rock have heard. That is Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. Now, you might be surprised that this isn't higher. Okay, I realize that's going to be controversial right off the bat. Some people are going to they're going to switch off this episode just for that reason alone. After all, isn't this one of the most famous rock songs ever recorded? And yes, guilty as charged. It's right up there on a lot of lists for the top rock songs of all time. In fact, the top songs of all time, really. Jimmy Page begins with a delicate acoustic progression before the song slowly grows into one of rock's greatest climaxes. And by the time he unleashes that legendary guitar solo, the audience has been on an 8-minute musical journey. And Robert Plant, I believe he sings, and as we wind on down the road, our shadow taller than our soul. Actually, some good lyrics. Now, it's almost impossible to imagine classic rock without this song. That being said, I've got to be a little bit brutal here. There is no single simple riff in this song that gets stuck in my head. So I personally could not place it higher on the list. Sometimes it's as simple as that. You know, like it's more like the song itself is like a winding road of a riff, sort of like Jessica. Only this song, I think it's got a little bit more oomph to it. It's more of a classic rock song that people feel obligated to recognize. Even if you're not the biggest Led Zeppelin fan, you kind of have to include this song on any list of the most influential rock songs of all time. And that's why it gets a respectful nod, you know. And I'm not the biggest Led Zeppelin fan myself. I've always been more of a Sabbath person, to be honest, especially Ozzy era Black Sabbath. But this is a classic tune. It's catchy. Um, the guitar solo is iconic. I just can't single out a single riff from this song. Like the opening riff, it's kind of hard to hum. You know, uh, I would have a hard time humming it. So I have to make that tough choice and not put this right at the top. And in fact, there are other tracks ahead of it. It's not even in second place. So number 4 is "Beat It" by Michael Jackson, and it's a bit of a wild card, you know. People often forget that "Beat It" is practically a rock song disguised as a pop hit. So it's kind of a heavy riff, actually, if you listen to it. That opening riff immediately commands attention, and then eventually Eddie Van Halen arrives with one of the most celebrated guest guitar solos in music history, and the song helped bridge pop and hard rock in the early 1980s, introducing millions of listeners to some heavier guitar sounds. And that's influence, you know? That's why I have to include this song um, in the fourth place. It even outshines Stairway to Heaven in my book. Now, again, a lot of people are going to think that my book sucks because of that, but you can't deny that "Beat It" is a catchy riff. And it's part of the reason why Michael Jackson shot to the top and is considered the king of pop. This riff, it's kind of it's kind of underrated in that respect. It is a part of his success. Moving on to number three, Barracuda by Heart. So now we're getting serious. The opening riff to Barracuda is one of those riffs you recognize before before the song even settles completely into the groove. And Nancy Wilson once explained where the inspiration came from. She basically kind of ripped the riff off from the band Nazareth. So yeah, I should have almost put this in a lower spot for that reason alone. That even she admitted. I think it was Nancy Wilson who said that anyway. But they kind of ripped the riff off. Um, and it was also influenced by when the Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. She wanted to have songs that had that type of power, and this song definitely has a lot of power. And they were influenced by the Beatles to learn all of their songs and sing and play them, and they wanted to create catchy songs, and this riff is a part of that legacy. You can hear the excitement that they had for music and the determination to write catchy songs every time Barracuda explodes through the speakers. So it's heavy. It's one of rock's most powerful opening riffs, even to this day, all these years later. And there's a reason that people remember this song more than the song that they ripped off. Sometimes that happens. So in a way, maybe that is an impressive feat of its own. People remember the riff more for being original than being some sort of rip-off song. I think that's uh, something that kind of speaks for itself. So this next song is in the number two spot in this six-way battle. This is Thunderstruck by AC/DC. And a lot of people, when they think of AC/DC and riffs, they think of Back in Black. And I get that. That's a catchy song. It's got a great riff. And, I'm sure I'll include that in a riff off battle if I do more of these in the future. But right now, I think Thunderstruck deserves some attention just because that riff is about as catchy as Back in Black. If your fingers don't start air guitaring the moment that the song opens, I have to wonder if you're even human, because this song, it just grabs you. Angus Young's rapid fire introduction is instantly recognizable anywhere in the world. Well, unless you've been living in a rock or something. I shouldn't say anywhere in the world, but you know what I mean. People people have heard it. It's one of those things that I don't know if it has it been used as an anthem at sporting events. It should have. It's that catchy, it's that good, and this is one of those riffs that seems like was made for concert arenas, and it's probably been in bars across the country and in the world throughout the world. I'm sure. Have there been TV commercials with the Thunderstruck riff? Well, there should have been. If no company has ever used this song, well, then there's probably a bunch of dumb companies out there. The riff has become almost a universal language for excitement. It somehow manages to be a little bit technically impressive while remaining ridiculously catchy. And that's kind of a rare combination. Now, you will find some guitar instructional videos out there on YouTube that actually will tell you that this song is actually not as complicated as you might think at first. And that's true. That's part of the beauty of this riff. It sounds more complicated than it actually is, yet it's actually still catchy. So, if you are getting into guitar, this is actually a riff you could probably learn fairly early on in your guitar studies, and you should definitely try to incorporate this if you're in a cover band or like a classic rock cover band. This could do well for If you are a cover band and you want to build a fan base, you if you can do a good version of Thunderstruck, you're on a good course for whatever limited stardom that cover bands can enjoy. And obviously, I will encourage you to make original music because that's how it should be more often than not. I want more people to create their own stuff. Even if it's not as good as Thunderstruck, I think you should have your own artistic vision and your own riffs that you can come up with. And believe me, there are some riffs out there that are just waiting to be developed. There are unique riffs waiting to be made, and it just takes some creative, visionary guitarist to do it. But that being said, it is hard to be original at the same time. So if you want success as a cover band, go ahead and learn Thunderstruck. You'll thank me later. So moving on to the number one spot. This might be a controversial pick, but I'm picking Day Tripper as the number one song, the number one riff, rather. And this is by the Beatles, of course. And why does this get the top spot? Well, the opening riff to Day Tripper is about as close to perfection as rock music gets. It's nice and simple. It's a little bit bluesy. It's not like extremely bluesy, but it's a little bit. And it's impossible to forget. I'm not even that big of a Beatles fan, but every once in a while, I will hear Day Tripper and I'll be like, this song is just it's just undeniably good. Like that riff it just kicks ass. And what's amazing about it too is that it doesn't seem like it's trying to even kick ass. It just does. It's not like the heaviest riff. It's not the most distorted riff. It's just there's something badass about it. I don't know. And even people who don't know the song's title can usually sing the riff from memory. It's got that kind of thing going for it. And the Beatles, they didn't just write great songs, they created musical vocabulary. This riff, I think, has been copied, referenced, and studied for decades. I said studies for decades. It's the kind of melody that randomly appears in your head while you're mowing the lawn or something like that, maybe walking through the grocery store, or yes, reaching for that coffee mug on the highest shelf. And that's the definition of iconic. If you can basically get a riff popping up in your head out of nowhere, you know, that's going to shoot you to the top of the list right there. Of course, this isn't meant to be the definitive list. Ask 10 guitar players, and you'll probably get 10 completely different rankings for these songs. Maybe maybe in the future, I'll look at riffs like Smoke on the Water, maybe Sweet Child of Mine, Whole Lot of Love, and stuff like that. But we'll see in a future riff off which riff deserves the crown for those six songs. But between these six here, I think the Beatles with, boy, I forgot the name of it, Day Tripper, there we go. With Day Tripper wins, Uh, that's the beauty of riffs, unlike long classical suites or intricate jazz compositions, a great riff can communicate everything in just a handful of notes. And, we'll be talking about those notes years after the fact. It's musical shorthand, and just a few syllables of a song, and suddenly everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. Well, assuming you're describing it well enough, you might be too vague in recalling how the song goes. You might mess up the melody and all that kind of stuff. So, again, just a reminder, the ranking is number 6, Jessica, the Allman Brothers Band. Number 5, Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin. Number 4, Beat It by Michael Jackson. Number 3, Barracuda by Heart. And number 2, Thunderstruck by AC/DC. And number one, I kind of had a voice crack. Number 1 is Day Tripper by the Beatles. So, do you agree? Did I leave out your favorite riff? Let me know what your number 1 would be of these 6, and maybe let me know what you would like in a future riff off. So, until next time, keep listening, and remember, sometimes the greatest musical ideas are not complicated at all. They're just simple riffs. All right, have a good one.